Part 111. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1110. Latest website. In the chairman's office of the headquarters building, Mr. Liang briefly explained the situation. Zhang Zongmu and Mr. Cai sat there with gloomy expressions. This big order may really fly. Are you sure that the documents you saw are not my problem? Why do I always feel that something is wrong? Mr. Cai looked at Zhang Zongmu suspiciously and said, if you really contacted people from Texas Instruments, they should know about it, right? Zhang Zongmu has not been with Texas Instruments for many years, and all he can contact now are only some friends. If Nokia is involved, he may not be able to find out. I quoted him a price of 119, but the other party was unmoved. Mr. Liang frowned and said, and the other party told me that he has already booked a ticket to Finland for tomorrow and will leave tomorrow. Isn't this too urgent? Mr. Cai sat down and thought for a while and said, it feels like putting pressure on us, pressing us step by step. Anyway, I don't think it is true. How could he buy Texas Instruments so easily? Product. Mr. Cai's intuition was right, but now it was no longer their turn to question so much. They had to get this order. At this moment, the three of them were all confused. If they quoted a low price to save the money, what price would Kuntai pay? Will you be tempted? In one afternoon, Mr. Liang made 4 or 5 phone calls to persuade Lu Feng in various ways, and the price was even lowered to $180. Lu Feng seemed determined and unwilling to talk more. Lu Feng said that it was mainly because they were insincere, and what he hated most was people who lied to him. In the evening, Mr. Liang was hosting a treat. Zhang Zongmu called Zhang Ruhing again and asked him to persuade Kuntai to lower the price. This order was very important to them. This was the first step for the company to go global. If companies like this don't want it, then will anyone on earth buy their products? Zhang Ruhing didn't sound nice on the phone either. He was already very unhappy when he asked him to help Kuntai find someone from Texas Instruments. If Zhang Zongmu hadn't called to intercede, he would never have gone. During dinner, Lu Feng was poured a lot of wine. Mr. Liang sat next to him and talked eloquently, while Zhang Ruhing was there to help him from time to time. But Lu Feng was like an old sow biting someone, refusing to let go. The price dropped to $175. At 10:30 in the evening, Lu Feng still shook his head and said that he had to take a rest and would take a flight tomorrow. This night was destined to be a sleepless night for Mr. Liang and others. They smoked packs of cigarettes one after another. They made a decision in the early hours of the morning. They made a last-ditch effort and the price was $150. This was their decision. The price closest to cost. Lu Feng couldn't sleep well either. He also murmured in his heart, fearing that he would lose. This was a game for brave men. He knew that the other party could not afford to lose, but the other party did not know that he could not afford to lose either. As long as Mr. Liang doesn't come to the airport to chase him tomorrow, this trick will be quickly exposed and the initiative will return to the opponent's hands again. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Lu Feng arrived at the breakfast room with sleepy eyes and ate alone. Zhu Lidong and Liukan just arrived late at about 7 o'clock. When they saw Lu Feng's eyes were red, it was obvious that he had not had a good rest last night. They could tell that Lu Feng attached great importance to this order. Pack your things and leave immediately. Put on a little thicker makeup. I've been a little lax about makeup these days. Lu Feng looked at them both, then stood up and left. At 8 o'clock, Lu Feng called Zhang Ruhing and just said he was leaving. Then he got in the car and went straight to the airport. When Mr. Liang came, he missed it. At this moment, he was extremely anxious and called Zhang Zongmu immediately. Zhang Zongmu on the other end of the phone also became anxious and said on the phone, stop the person and the price can be set at $150. Call Zhang Ruhing and ask him to rush to the airport together. I will be there soon. Lu Feng and his team were so determined that they no longer cared about the truth or falsehood. If it turned out to be true, they would not be able to bear the consequences. Who knows where the next company that is willing to choose them will be? According to the development in the previous life, they really couldn't sell it. In the end, they had no choice but to sell it to Huaqiangbei in Shenzhen through wholesale and retail. In the VIP lounge of the airport, Lu Feng looked at the time and asked Zhu Lidong in a low voice, "Is everything arranged?" "Don't worry, here are all the people arranged by us." Zhu Lidong glanced around. There are a total of 35 people on the business charter flight this time, all arranged by Zhu Lidong. The scene has already arrived on the 20th. The plane will take off in 40 minutes. The ground service staff are providing various services and have arranged to board the plane one after another. "Sir, please be ready to board the plane." Lu Feng stood up, straightened his clothes, and walked slowly towards the boarding gate. Suddenly, Mr. Liang rushed in. As he walked, he explained to the staff that he was looking for someone. When he saw Lu Feng, he hurriedly shouted, "Mr. Kuntai, please wait a moment, we can talk again." Lu Feng turned around and looked at him, who was sweating profusely and obviously trotting in all the way, and said, "We have talked too many times, there is no need to have such a meaningless conversation. Please give me 10 minutes. Our company is very sincere this time." "Don't worry, it only takes 10 minutes," Mr. Liang said hurriedly, "our chairman will be here soon. The price can be as low as possible. It is okay to lower the price again. Showing our sincerity is also a punishment for the unpleasant things that happened before. I'm sorry, the plane will take off soon. I still say what I said, to do business, you need to be sincere." Lu Feng gave him a cold look, turned around and prepared to get on the plane. Looking at Zhu Lidong immediately understood. There were 6 or 7 men in suits standing not far away. They seemed to be preparing to board the plane. Zhu Lidong smiled at them and waved slightly. One of the men, a man in his 40s, immediately asked the stewardess, "Should we board the plane now? We haven't all arrived yet." "Hello, sir, this commercial flight is a shared charter flight. It takes off at 8:40 as agreed. We haven't all arrived yet, why are you flying?" "I paid a price dozens of times more expensive than first class, and this kind of service attitude. We are not allowed to board the plane now. We can only fly after we are all here." He was arrogant. He scolded unreasonably. "Sorry sir, there are 35 passengers on this flight. Please board the plane first. Is this what you are doing with me? Let me wait for the plane. We are not all here today. No one can get on the plane. If you make me anxious, believe it or not, the plane will blow up for you," the man yelled. "It's just that I spent so much money, not for the plane to wait for the person, but for the person to wait for the plane." They made a lot of noise and blocked the boarding gate, and no one was allowed to get in. Lu Feng and the other 3 were blocked there and couldn't board the plane. Mr. Liang was overjoyed when he saw this. God really helped him. He hurriedly said, "Mr. Kuntai, we are willing to show our sincerity and the price can be $160, and sign the contract directly. The deposit is only 20%, and the remaining funds will be paid after the goods arrive." Lu Feng stood there without saying a word, and Mr. Liang kept talking. A few minutes later, Zhang Ruhing was the first to arrive. Mr. Liang looked at Zhang Ruhing. His mouth was dry after what he had said, and the other party did not care at all. "Listen. Why didn't you leave?" Zhang Ruhing stepped forward and asked. "It's getting rowdy," Lu Feng said helplessly. When Zhang Ruhing saw the situation at the scene, he secretly shouted for advice. He also helped persuade him and was willing to be a middleman. The two were talking and Zhang Zongmu felt it. Zhang Zongmu, who was already in his 60s, ran out of breath. After catching his breath, he saw Lu Feng apologize first and explain what happened before. We are sincere and hope to be given another chance. Even if we get the order from Texas Instruments through Nokia, whether it is shipping or ordering, the time is longer than ours. As for the price, we can make concessions. Zhang Zongmu, there is no other way at this moment. Faced with the crowd's siege, Lu Feng seemed a little hesitant. Zhang Zongmu called Zhang Ruhing aside to talk for a while. Zhang Ruhing returned to Lu Feng and whispered, $150 is their cost price. This time it is we really bottomed out, and we signed a formal contract directly. After Lu Feng heard this, he called the stewardess over and asked if they could take off. The stewardess reluctantly said that the police had been notified and the plane's safety issues had to be ruled out first. It couldn't take off today. Maybe this is God's will. Lu Feng sighed, looked at Mr. Liang and Zhang Zongmu and said, then let's talk again. I hope you can really show your sincerity, otherwise you will still have to leave tomorrow. Must. The two parties left the airport, got in a commercial vehicle and went straight to the group headquarters. The initiative in the negotiation this time was obviously no longer in their hands. Lu Feng made many demands on products and prices, including delivery time, final payment and other details. Although some things were difficult to handle, they all agreed. For them, this order was about making achievements, selling the products, and letting other manufacturers see the quality of their products. The speed was very fast. On the same day, the two parties signed a formal agreement for 1 million products. Each unit cost us $150, with a total price of us $150 million. The deposit was 20% of the total amount. The product was delivered. The period is divided into 3 stages. 200,000 pieces will be delivered in November, 400,000 pieces will be delivered in January of the following year, and all will be delivered in April. The final payment will be the payment for the previous batch of products when the products are delivered for the second time. Everything went smoothly. We had a meal together that night. Mr. Liang said that Mr. Cai had been fired. There would be no problem this time. So many things happened before because of this man who was causing trouble and destroying our brother's relationship. Emotion. Lu Feng didn't say much about this, he just hoped that they would deliver the goods on time according to the delivery standards. That night, Lu Feng and the others booked flights to Bangkok for the next day. In the morning of the next day, Mr. Liang personally sent the Lu Feng and the others to the airport, and said that the first batch of products would definitely appear at the Bangkok port on time in 2 months. Thank you for your hard work. I hope this is a good start. When our mobile phones are sold around the world, I believe we will be each other's achievers. Lu Feng held his hand and said a few polite words, turned around and walked to board the plane. Mouth. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1111. Latest website. As the plane took off, Lu Feng looked at Zhu Lidong and the two of them. The three of them breathed a sigh of relief. The biggest problem during this period was not the game, but pretending to be a Thai. If they were not careful, they would be exposed. I am from mainland China. Damn, it's done. I'm almost mute this time. Liukin sat slumped in his seat. This time he said less and had more work to do. All kinds of information needed to be considered for the subsequent overall assembly. It can be said that I am much busier than in the company. After this batch of goods arrives in Thailand, will it be transferred back to China? The toll will be a bit expensive, Zhu Lidong calculated. It's too expensive to go by water, but the cost is not high. We can still compete with Motorola. Lu Feng asked Zhu Lidong, what is the approximate cost price? Based on the main parts costing $150, our factory cost must be less than 7,000 yuan, which is certain to be competitive in the market, Zhu Lidong said in a low voice. Lu Feng nodded and said nothing. This was just a stopgap measure. In the end, he had to produce it himself and price the main parts at a bargain price. He looked at Liukin and asked, If we visit someone else's factory this time, if we can buy everything engraving machine, is there no problem with production? It's pretty much what I predicted. It's just about the proficiency of the workers and the machines have been debugged. I also went to check out their relevant parameters. I talked to Zhang Ruhing a few days ago and he can be of great help, Liukan said truthfully. Said. Buying the machine back is one thing, but how to adjust it and use it is another matter. If Liukan and the others were left to figure it out on their own, it would probably take a lot of time. As the plane landed, Lu Feng and his party changed their clothes. They met with several persons in charge of the security company that day and asked them to keep an eye on the port. As soon as the goods arrived, they would sign for them and immediately forward the goods to Tianjin in China, where they would be processed by the Tianjin factory. Sign for receipt. Early the next morning, the three of them put on suits and flew to Shenzhen. They got off the plane at 10 o'clock in the morning and received a piece of news as soon as they arrived at the company. The mobile phone war has begun. Motorola and Nokia started a price war. At the same time, Ericsson officially announced its entry into the country. It started filing in May and has now officially launched sales. Many people in the world believe that this is expanding the front and retaliating for its market failure in France, while Nokia but he has the momentum to become more courageous as he fights, and has already begun to show his strength. At the same time, Bird officially announced its entry into mobile phones and signed a formal contract with a French communications company. The product would be launched in 1996 at the latest. All technical support came from the French company Sagem. In the office, Lu Feng looked at the complicated news during this period without saying a word. It had begun to deviate. According to the original development, Bird only officially produced mobile phones in 1999, and now it is 3 years ahead of schedule. In the past few months, the international community's blockade of GFN has become more and more serious. The Wassenaar Agreement has begun to take shape. Not only GFN has encountered difficulties in sales in surrounding countries, but other manufacturers are also in a similar situation. Everyone can feel that the most difficult moment is coming. The appearance design of GXN mobile phone has been changed several times, but Lu Feng is not satisfied with it. Now the domestic design cannot be aesthetic at all, and there is a lack of talents in this area. Finally, Lu Feng made the decision to simply merge the styles of Nokia and Motorola. Get it and use it. Anyway, if there are too many lice, you are not afraid of being bitten. Motorola continues to attack GFN in the field of mobile phones. Watanabe even said in an interview that GFN would not be able to produce a single mobile phone within 10 years without external technical support. The outside world is even speculating that GFN's profits are falling crazily, and competition in the home appliance industry has reached a point where profits are mutually exclusive. As for VCDS, piracy is rampant again, and GFN's market share is declining. There was a lot of news outside. Apart from his 2-point and one-line work, Lu Feng rarely bothered with these matters. He handed over all the promotion and marketing tasks of the mobile phone to Du Guoying. This person had his own unique insights in marketing. Time flies so fast, and it's winter in a blink of an eye. My family has called me several times. My mother hopes that he can go back this year. He hasn't been home for several years. Lu Feng felt that he couldn't refuse, so he could only say vaguely that he would answer as much as he could. In the villa, the family of 3 had dinner. Duo took the trouble to watch cartoons, and Zhang Xiaoyan sat on the sofa and looked through the introduction of foreign cosmetics. Go back for the new year. You can go back by yourself. Duo and I will spend the time here. Zhang Xiaoyan's mind was obviously not on the book. It's boring for me to go back by myself. You haven't seen your mother in 2 years, right? After Lu Feng said it, he felt that going back would be troublesome again. He sighed and said, forget it, your brothers are like wolves and tigers. Yeah, I can't stand it. I'm afraid that I'm soft-hearted. Zhang Xiaoyan wanted to say something else, but in the end she just sighed. In the past 2 years, she has given a lot of money to her family. Now it is equivalent to the whole family doing nothing and relying on her to support them. It's so easy to just break it off. When the phone call comes, the person on the other end is crying. Zhang Xiaoyan can't listen to this. Let's talk about it later. Lu Feng slumped on the sofa, secretly calculating the time for the goods to arrive at the port. After the first batch of products arrives at the port, they can be produced during the Chinese New Year. There will also be a board of directors meeting in December. The phone on the table suddenly rang. Duo ran over to pick up the phone and asked, "Is it Li Jialong?" "I'm not Li Jialong, I'm Su Yurong." "Are you Duo?" "Let your father answer the phone." Su Yurong's voice on the other end of the phone was quite brisk. "I have good news to tell him." "Who?" Zhang Xiaoyan asked. "Vixen," Duo said angrily to Lu Feng, "I'm looking for you." "How does this child speak?" "Who taught you?" Lu Feng glanced at Zhang Xiaoyan, stood up, picked up the phone and asked, "Who is it?" "It's me." "The Vixen," Su Yurong teased, "your family has a good education. Why are you arguing with a child?" Lu Feng didn't know why, but he always felt that something good was coming, so he hurriedly asked, "What good news do you want to tell me?" "Oh, for your sake, I have been very busy. I don't even know what the photolithography machine is for. I am looking for people everywhere. I have lost several pounds in the past few months." On the other end of the phone, Su Yurong said slowly, "How do you compensate me?" When Lu Feng heard her tone, he was overjoyed and said hurriedly, "This is really good news. Which company is selling it? At what price? How long will it take to arrive?" "Don't worry, I will definitely have you. If you have anything to do in the future, just ask me." "Forget it. You owe me a big favor. The other party has a complete assembly line of lithography machines. The model is the same as what you said. I found out through people that the other party is asking for $110 million. This is still a high level. I only got it through a close relationship. The item is in Estonia, Europe. The sale of this kind of item requires approval. If you pay now, it will probably arrive during the Chinese New Year," Su Yurong said to the phone. "Great, sign the contract right away. I will send someone to Hong Kong to see you tomorrow. Which companies are involved and what cargo ships are used? We will pay for all the funds ourselves. I will give you a big red envelope during the Chinese New Year," Lu Feng promised. "Road." Su Yurong snorted when he heard this and said, "You are really cautious. You can't trust me so much. Why do you send your own people to take over?" No, the relationship between the two of you is mainly about the need to pay. You can't be asked to pay. Don't think so much. We are all old friends." Lu Feng smiled with wrinkles on his face. "If I were a man, would you probably become your brother now? I won't interfere too much. The reason for this purchase is to do research for the university in Xiangjiang. I have made similar arrangements. You can send someone come over, team." After Su Yurong said this, he asked, "When will you come to Xiangjiang? I miss you a little. I'm in a situation where I can't go out." "Don't worry, I'll be back soon. If I go there, I'll just make a boat trip." "Is Zhang Xiaoyan at your house?" "You, just trick me, a woman who is blinded by love. I won't tell you more. There is still a dinner party. I'm sorry." After Su Yurong finished speaking, he hung up the phone. Lu Feng looked quite excited. He turned around and saw Zhang Xiaoyan looking at him and said, "There is news about the lithography machine. I thought it was through the Science and Technology Committee, but I didn't expect that with her. There is progress." "Didn't you say that this thing is difficult to get?" Zhang Xiaoyan put the book in her hand aside and said, "Sure enough, I still have the ability. I attend dinner parties every day and there are so many men around me. I can't pull that face off, otherwise I will also be a social butterfly. As long as you can do things, don't be so sour. Go to bed early. Lu Feng stood up, stretched, and walked upstairs. Zhang Xiaoyan sat there and sighed. In terms of ability, she would never be able to catch up with Su Yurong in her life, but she despised women like Su Yurong from the bottom of her heart. Zhang Xiaoyan and Zhang Fengxia had talked about her before, and Zhang Fengxia felt that she's just a shameless woman. As everyone knows, there are many shameless people in this world, and there are very few people who can reach her level. Early the next morning, Lu Feng called Wei Yandan and asked her to select a few suitable people to go to Xiangjiang to discuss matters related to the lithography machine with Su Yurong. At the same time, he freed up $120 million in finance in advance to make relevant payments. After Liukan heard the news, he was extremely excited. He called Lu Feng and said, "The company has received the news. The first batch of goods will arrive at Bangkok port tomorrow. Now there is also news about the lithography machine. At the latest, the year after next. We can produce it ourselves." What a double happiness, Lu Feng sighed. But there is an old saying that goes, good fortune never comes in pairs, misfortune never comes alone. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1112. Latest website. After Wei Yandan got the news, he immediately formed a team of 10 people and rushed to Xiangjiang. For fear of being detained if the senior management went there, the top person in charge of the team was just a vice president. Everything seems to be moving in a good direction, and Lu Feng's mood has improved. He is very confident about mobile phones. During this period, he held a meeting with the management and set the goal to achieve bird success and rebuild Huaqiangbei. I have also held several intensive meetings with Vice Mayor Lu and others in the past few days. The city is very supportive of Jiafeng's idea. At the same time, the second phase of the Tianjin factory project has been completed, the dust-free workshop, and the chip industry chain are expected to be in it will be ready for use early next year. Jiafeng was already so huge that Lu Feng was unable to take into account the conditions of its subsidiaries and could only focus on its core business. It was December in the blink of an eye, and even Shenzhen, which had been hot all year round, began to cool down, and it was snowing heavily in the north. In the past few months, Jiafeng rarely said anything in the face of outside voices, and Lu Feng was silent even more. It was as if they had evaporated from the world, and the invitations sent by various associations and industry conferences seemed to have sunk to the bottom of the sea, without any news. Lu Feng's reluctance to appear in public has gradually become the consensus of the business community. He disappeared into the mountains like a TV battle. In this lively era, there is no shortage of people's darlings. Shi Yizhu, who sells melatonin, began to pay attention to the internet this year. Mao Zongji got through the Himalayas. His words are not surprising and he will not stop. He also firmly occupies the news section. The mobile phone industry is with Wu Ying, PHS has been very popular, and there is also the war of words on the internet in various media headlines. Everyone seems to have learned Lu Feng's tricks. Some people go around exaggerating, saying nothing shocking, treating the media like monkeys, coming and going when they are called, and then attracting investment after gaining momentum. Various health products, IQ taxes come and go. In the second half of this year, people began to forget about Lu Feng and instead paid attention to Zhu Lidong. He continued to appear in the media and had constant wars of words with foreign capital. The public's abuse of him even exceeded the original level. Lu Feng. When talking about this matter several times, Zhu Lidong complained bitterly. Now he dared not go out alone and always had a bodyguard by his side. Lu Feng comforted him and said, "It would be great to be famous. If there is a chance in the future, if you change jobs from GFN, you can get a lot of money just by virtue of the name." Zhu Lidong smiled bitterly and said nothing. He knew in his heart that it would be difficult for him to leave GFN in this life. On December 1, 1995, the weather forecast said that North China would usher in the first wave of cold air, and thousands of trees would be covered with frost flowers overnight. Lu Feng sat at home and recalled this year with emotion. From the rapid retreat at the beginning of the year, to the trip to Europe, the sudden change in the international environment, which led to conflicts with Wall Street capital, this December passed so slowly, but now thinking about it, it started so quickly, and 1 year passed so quickly. The issues at last year's board meeting have not been resolved. This year's board of directors still has to face it. There may be more things to do this year. Lu Feng knows in his heart that the more stable GFN is, the more capital will want to squeeze him out, whether it is selling to Wall Street capital, or London capital, is devouring it. In front of wolves and tigers, after all, I am just a piece of meat. During lunch, a phone call came directly to his home. Lu Feng picked up the phone and asked, "Who is this?" "Mr. Lu, it's me, John." John's voice came from the other end of the phone. "There will be a board meeting in a few days, so I'm calling you specifically." "Yeah, a year has passed in the blink of an eye. How have you been lately?" Lu Feng said politely. "Everything is fine. I want to tell you good news. Didn't you mention the private jet? I also think you have been too tired these years. I have solved the airplane issue for you. It is a Boeing company. It was renovated from a commercial machine, but the interior decoration is still very luxurious, but it cost a full $50 million as a reward for your contribution to the company over the years." John smiled on the phone and said, "In this board meeting, I let's sit there first, and after the board meeting approves it, we'll fund the purchase." Lu Feng could sense that the plane would not come into his hands easily, so he said, "What do I need a plane for now? Why do I need to fly around the country every day? These are all temporary. The aircraft will be used sooner or later. The group's development this year is very good. I have seen some reports showing that there will be less investment in the future. Only the third phase of the Tianjin factory and the internal decoration of the headquarters building are left. The company's development has already gradually stabilizing. There is still a large amount of idle funds. Idle funds are harmful to the interests of shareholders." "How about a one-time dividend?" John asked very directly. Lu Feng laughed when he heard this. It turned out to be true. Before all the money had been invested, these people were trying to get money out of it. Of course, but there is a problem. When the contract was originally signed, it was stipulated that the prerequisite for shareholder dividends is that all investment funds are in place before full shareholder rights can be exercised. If you transfer the remaining funds, I will agree to dividends. Lu Feng was also very direct. "Mr. Lu, the previous contract can be changed. There is nothing that cannot be changed. There will definitely be follow-up funds." John seemed to have another plan, and his voice changed. "For the follow-up $1.5 billion, you can call it, but when you pay the dividends, you have to sign a special reward and get the $1.5 billion back. It's absolutely impossible. You are harming the interests of other shareholders. That's all. If you have anything to say at the board of directors meeting." Lu Feng hung up the phone immediately after speaking. Lu Feng felt that this board meeting might not be that easy. After John was rejected by Lu Feng, he immediately called other shareholders to discuss the matter, hoping to pass it in the board of directors vote. He also promised benefits to many shareholders. In the next few years, he would not rule out continuing to acquire other shareholders. The price of stocks will only be high, not low. In Xiangjiang, in the Sun Hongkai vice president's office, Jenkins stood in front of the desk and watched Feng Xiao explain the meaning of John's call. "Don't want to pay for the follow-up money? Isn't this in compliance with the contract? Feng Xiao raised his head and asked. It is indeed not in compliance with the regulations, but this kind of regulation belongs to the company. In order to raise the valuation, many companies use a contract with a price, and a part of the funds will be returned later. It is also a common method, Jenkin reminded. If this matter is if you do it, it will definitely be a big deal for the Schroeder Group. What does Brother Feng mean? Feng Xiao asked. Mr. Feng, this is our right as a shareholder. There is no need to listen to his opinion. I got some news from the outside. If Schroeder's Group does this, it is likely that it does not intend to invest in GFN Group for the long term. This year in Europe, in several important meetings, the United States is putting pressure on them, and this pressure comes from Wall Street and Silicon Valley. Jenkin helped him analyze the structure of today's world. Feng Xiao didn't want to hear this. In this year, what he heard most about was the world's situation, various international conferences that in the eyes of ordinary people were completely like heavenly books. He needed to carefully read the speeches of various countries in the entire conference and analyze the future of each country. Economic development, thereby deciding which countries' enterprises to invest in. In other words, he originally wanted GFN to fight against Silicon Valley and Fuzhou. Now that Brother Feng is really about to do it, they are coward again and want to find a way to sell GFN. In addition to making some money from the process, it's useless, Feng Xiao said angrily. These countries are interesting, just like Brother Feng said, he wants to give someone a brick behind his back, but when the person turns around, he says he is selling bricks. International affairs cannot be explained clearly in a few words. You should understand the current world situation. This is not an economic matter, nor is it entirely a technical matter. I think the mainland has not developed. Jenkin gave his own opinion. What I want to say in my heart. People who know more about international affairs can now clearly see what will happen in these 2 years in 1996 and 1997. What is Schroeder's Group? Who do you work for? Needless to say, those people are world-famous shit-stirrers, disgusting people who are very good at it. In the coming 2 years, if we don't stir up trouble in the country, and then sell it to the United States as a favor, it will be the best of both worlds. Feng Xiao looked a little irritated as he sat there. He didn't want to believe that GFN couldn't bear it, but judging from the news distributed through many channels, the next 2 years would indeed be difficult, and GFN seemed to have become a target. Jenkin's judgment was also correct. It would be very smooth for Schroeder Group to first withdraw some funds, sell the other party a favor, and finally sell off the stocks in his hands. Jenkin could tell that Feng Xiao didn't want to talk more about this matter, so he changed the subject and asked, "How is your father lately?" "I woke up a few days ago, and I'm taking medicine to maintain it, but I'm afraid I won't be able to survive the new year." Feng Xiao was in a very low mood, and then he said very unhappy, "It's like this, but my eldest brother and second brother still won't come back." Jenkin was too embarrassed to say anything about family matters. He just said that if he couldn't make the decision, he could hold a meeting to discuss the matter. "I'm going to see him today, just in time to listen to what my dad wants," Feng Xiao said. After looking at the time, he stood up and started packing his things. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, in the high-end ward of Queen Mary Medical College, Mr. Feng was already very thin, with various tubes inserted into his body, and his skin was white, as if he was exhausted. Feng Xiao walked in accompanied by medical staff. Seeing his father in such a state, he felt heartbroken and couldn't help but have red eyes. After listening to the doctor's analysis of the situation, Feng Xiao sat in front of the bed and wiped his tears. "Don't cry," Mr. Feng said weakly. "If you don't cry, you are the softest. Being soft-hearted is not good." Feng Xiao sniffed, suppressed his tears and said, "Dad, let me tell you something." Feng Xiao explained GFN's situation again. The Schroeder Group's thoughts have now been completely made clear. The international situation is that on one side there is a poor mainland and on the other side there are many rich developed countries. Anyone with a little bit of brains everyone knows how to choose. Mr. Feng thought for a moment and said, sell it for a price. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1113. Latest website. The current development of the situation has obviously exceeded Mr. Feng's expectations. He did not expect that the international changes would be so fast. He just told Feng Xiao to learn to read the trend. Even if he wanted to sell Jiafeng stocks, he should not let Shiluoda Group can get it so easily. You must learn to bet on both sides, the one with the highest price will win. Don't express your position easily at this year's board meeting. You must learn to maintain a balance. You must not make Lu Feng feel comfortable, nor can you make John feel comfortable. This is the way for small shareholders to survive. Mr. Feng was too weak. He wanted to teach Feng Xiao step by step how to deal with these things, but his body no longer allowed it. With less than a week left before the shareholders' meeting, Lu Feng took the time to go to Tianjin to see the construction of the integrated circuit factory, but there were some rumors starting to spread at the group headquarters. There are rumors among middle management shareholders that the company has achieved profits and has tens of billions of yuan in its accounts. However, a group of people led by Lu Feng refuses to pay dividends. They use various means to hollow out the company, especially Lu Feng. All personal food and clothing expenses will be reimbursed by the company. Nominally everyone owns the company's stock. As soon as the senior management met, they said that the company belongs to you, and what you pay for the company is what you pay for yourself. However, they are full of money. When the year-end dividends are paid, everyone is only allowed to take a little bit. In the end, it's almost like getting a dead salary. The middle-level backbones compare the treatment of foreign companies with each other. Some people say that in Silicon Valley companies, middle-level managers generally receive 15 salaries and are given 2 days off per week. R/U00260 workers are even more lenient. If they are in a bad mood, they can just go home and lie down. Therefore, they believe that interest is the prerequisite for work. These things have been spreading more and more within the company recently, and no one knows where they came from. There was a sudden demand to reduce work intensity, and calls for a generous dividend at the end of the year became louder and louder. As a last resort, senior executives Wei Yandan, Zhu Lidong, and Du Guoying stepped forward and held several meetings to appease everyone. It is a fact that the treatment of leading American companies is better than that of Jiafeng. Many executives cannot refute it. They can only keep saying that Jiafeng's treatment is already top-notch in the country. Even if you join a state-owned enterprise, you cannot get it. This kind of income, not to mention that there are many from state-owned enterprises within the company. The people below were obviously dissatisfied with this answer. The work intensity was high and the income was not good, so many people began to complain and lament their unhappiness. What is happiness? Perhaps, when I eat steamed buns and others eat steamed buns, I am happier than others. When I see someone eating steamed buns and also eating pickled mustard, then I am unlucky. After the last garbage project, it was clear that the headquarters had stricter supervision on the subordinates this time. Before Lu Feng came back, he called Wei Yandan to talk about the factory. Wei Yandan mentioned the management's complaints on the phone. Okay, I understand. Let's talk about it when I go back tomorrow. After hanging up the phone, Lu Feng knew in his heart that these things were all done by John. Looking at the current situation, these were just pre-dinner snacks. Early the next morning, Lu Feng returned to Shenzhen and attended the shareholders' meeting of the R/U00260 company that day. Before the board of directors meeting, all shareholders of the group would hold a meeting and vote at the meeting to elect one person to serve as the general representative on the board of directors. The general representative will fight for the interests of these people at the board meeting. Lufeng is different from other companies in designing employee stock ownership. It has given a high degree of autonomy. In addition to employee stock ownership not being sold and only having dividend rights, it also allows them to effectively participate in corporate management. Therefore, GFeng's management has always said that they are fighting for their company. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there were already hundreds of people sitting in the conference room. As everyone took their seats, Lufeng and Liuken walked in. There was applause. Liuken whispered to Lufeng about everyone's situation. "How many people are here?" Liuken asked a clerk. The number of employee stockholders of the R/U0026D company should be 175, but the actual number is 123, accounting for 78.5% of the company's total shareholdings. According to the regulations of the board of directors, it meets the meeting requirements. Liuken nodded when he heard this, walked up to the stage and sat down. Lufeng sat next to him. Liuken looked at the people below and said in deep thought, "The board meeting is about to start. Everyone, you have been working hard for a year. We have made very good progress in research and development this year and have overfulfilled the task. I believe that after the board meeting, we will have goals for the new year. I have also heard a lot of gossip recently, and many people are talking about dividends. Mr. Lu happens to be free, so he also came to listen and talk to everyone." Liuken summarized this year's work, everyone's income, and the current overall situation of the company, and then said, "Then let Mr. Lu say a few words," and everyone applauded. There was sparse applause at the scene, and everyone looked at Lufeng with wide eyes, almost with the word red written on their faces. "Recently, I heard that some engineers in our R/U0026D company were comparing our salary and treatment with Intel and even Texas Instruments, so I felt a gap in my mind. They are all engineers and they are engaged in technology research and development. Yes, your income is less than half of others, and you are still tired from work," Lufeng said calmly to everyone. "Mr. Lu told me that some people are incompetent and still want a lot of income. I think this statement is wrong." When Liuken heard this, he turned his head and glanced at Lufeng. When had he said this? He didn't do anything at the moment. Lufeng said he said it, and he just said it. Why are there such big differences in wages and benefits? It's because I am incompetent. If the company I founded is a world-class company, and if my company sells tens of thousands of chips, memory, motherboards and other products to the world every year, it will not follow everyone was worried about the money, but later on, I felt that it wasn't all my fault. In the past 2 years, we have traveled abroad desperately to open up overseas markets. When we went out, we realized that not only people in this world are divided into 3, 6, or 9, but also countries. People who come from poor areas are those who are in rich areas. To use a simple metaphor, landlords and rich people know that they are all going sideways, and they are all very cruel. If they say they will sanction you, they will sanction you, and if they say you will not be able to survive, you will not be able to survive. But I'm not wrong. Is it because I have a bad background? Isn't it good at home? Why can't it be done at home? After all, it's the family that is not good. Now that Jiafeng has some foundation, he can't just have some money and just eat, drink and have fun. I also know, many people said that I transferred property and used the company's money as my own money. I can accept audits. Over the years since I founded Jiafeng, I have never cashed out a penny. Apart from salary and some dividends, I have no other income every year. Everyone wants to live a good life, earn more, and have time to spend. I can understand it, but the company's current situation is not the time to enjoy it. If our family is not doing well, then we have to live a more careful life. As for whether to pay dividends or not, I tell everyone, I will definitely pay dividends. Whether it is a big dividend or not, I can't give an answer. Some people say that there are more than $2 billion in the account. If you take out 2 or 3, 100 million will be divided among everyone. This kind of word smells like Zubaiji. Divide the luggage and go back to jail as one. The company will get better and better, and I believe the dividends will get higher and higher every year. Don't compete with Intel engineers for salary, but compete with them in terms of ability. In China, you are among the best engineers. It's definitely a top-notch income. If you have anything you want to say, you can say it. Just say it in the meeting and we won't discuss it in the meeting. After Lu Feng finished speaking, he looked at everyone. Everyone, look at me and I look at you. They seemed to be caring. A man in his 40s in the front row was poked by someone next to him. He said, "Mr. Lu, we actually want to know, is Jiafeng still yours now?" "I founded Jiafeng. I am the founder and a resident of the board of directors," Lu Feng replied. According to the company's regulations, if a dividend plan is proposed to the board of directors, as long as more than 51% of shareholders agree, the plan can be implemented, right? The person asked again. "That's understandable." Lu Feng stared at this man, frowning secretly. Everyone present immediately understood that Lu Feng no longer had absolute control over the company. Ever since the Schroders Group came in, the management had been discussing in private that with such a large amount of money thrown in, the other party seemed to have a lot of money. There is no place to put it. Many people say that the control is no longer in Mr. Lu's hands. Now it has been confirmed. After a conversation, Liukin made a summary of the R/U0026D company's work for the year, and then came the candidates for the board meeting representatives. After voting, Liukin was finally selected as a representative to attend the board meeting. After the meeting, Lu Feng and Li Cheng walked out of the conference room. On the way back to the office, Lu Feng asked, "Who is that person who asked me questions?" The head of the domestic R/U0026D center, Yang Fukin, can be considered a veteran employee. He was previously responsible for overseas technical exchanges. Liukin felt something and said, "This person is just outspoken, and he is relatively reliable in his work. It can be seen that he should be very familiar with the benefits in Silicon Valley. At this juncture, try to use some reliable people as much as possible. You have to make sure that you can sit on the board of directors in the past 2 years. Position." Lu Feng stopped and looked at Liukin and said, "Some people who are capable but have ideas in their hearts should give up when it's time to give up. This year I said that everything will be focused on research and development. Next year it will probably not be the case." Liukin could feel something and just nodded without saying a word. Lu Feng walked slowly towards the office, sighing deeply, and said to himself, "My wife entered the delivery room, but heard the news that the hat may be green. It's really a dilemma." Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1114. Latest website. When such a problem occurs within the company, you don't need to ask to know that it is the work team that John dispatched inside the company. However, there is another point. As the number of employees in Jiafeng increases, and as the middle management gains a firm foothold, internal interests are formed. Faction, this situation is also normal. How many large companies ultimately die not from external forces, but from internal struggles? Along the way, the business empire that supports each other from multiple dimensions such as terminal products, business models, industrial manufacturing, and core technologies has become more difficult than Lu Feng imagined. Especially in terms of core technologies, it involves international competition. In the core disputes between major powers. This is not something that one person or a company can resist. Lu Feng didn't know much about the positioning of various countries in the world in the 1990s. This was his shortcoming. After all, he was just a businessman in his last life, and he was a small businessman who was unlikely to achieve this level. He thought that he could at least control a relatively low-end chip industry chain, rely on the prosperity of the domestic market, make money from other products, subsidize chip development, and win in more than 10 years. Who would have thought Europe could be so cowardly? As time went on, Jiafeng set the location of the board meeting in a 5-star hotel to facilitate the major shareholders to stay and hold meetings. With the arrival of some small shareholders, it became lively. On December 15, as a private plane landed at the airport, the cabin door opened, and John walked out accompanied by several people. He looked back at the Boeing 737 and said to the people around him, "It's so good. I give out a gift and hope to get some tangible rewards in return." He knows better than you about the current situation. "Maximizing personal interests is the best choice," said the person next to him. John nodded slightly, agreeing with this statement. In John's eyes, Jiafeng's future is certain. As the most prominent Chinese company, it is most appropriate to be used for surgery in the current international situation. So in John's eyes, don't talk about the future now, just talk about money. Half an hour later, Lu Feng received a call and John invited him to have lunch together. Lu Feng hung up the phone, went out and drove straight to the agreed hotel. When they arrived, John and his party had just booked a private room. John saw a smile on Lu Feng's face and walked forward and said, "Long time no see. This once I took advantage of you and came here on a private plane. I didn't say I would definitely accept your flight." Lu Feng held his hand and said, "Recently I heard that some shareholding management within the group are making trouble. Do you know about this? What's wrong? Is it affecting performance?" John took a deep breath and said, "The bigger the company is, the more troublesome it will be in internal management. Where are we now? According to the development of international large companies, it is best to introduce advanced technology management philosophy and management team." "Tisk," Lu Feng slapped his lips and said, "if you don't sell it directly, you don't have to worry about anything." "Ha ha ha ha, this is a solution," John said without any hesitation. "It can be seen that you are still not satisfied with the investment in Jiafeng. I have worked hard to achieve results in the past 2 years, but I still cannot win the confidence of investors." Lu Feng stared at him and said, "The times are vast and cannot be undone by human effort. If you are a European, Schroeder will definitely support you," John said sincerely. "Yes, the times are vast, and you don't think it's okay before the show starts." Lu Feng didn't want to discuss these things with him, so he said, "Let's eat." In the private room, as soon as he sat down, John shared with Lu Feng several important meetings in Europe in the second half of the year. As a large consortium, Schroeder's group was able to find out the topics and negotiation results of some important meetings. Americans went to Europe relatively quickly in the second half of the year, even threatening and coaxing them. It can be summed up in 2 words: blockade. John said these things at the dinner table just to make Lu Feng understand the situation clearly. He put down the chopsticks in his hand and said, "Do you pay attention to the military based on your strength? If you don't pay attention, you don't have time," Lu Feng said casually. "Then you know how many warships have sailed here in the past 6 months, how many military bases there are around, the attitude of those international banks towards you in the second half of this year, and the top international industry associations, not to mention chips and semiconductors, heavy industry. The installed machines have now been completely sealed, including large shield machines, heavy-duty gantry cranes, high-end machine tools, and various machine tools known as industrial mother machines." John said seriously to Lu Feng, "It's like you are craving for a series of lithography machine industry lines. In the face of absolute strength, the country will look very small, let alone enterprises, or even individuals." "So you surrendered?" Lu Feng raised his head and stared at him and asked. No, no, it's not surrender, it's your words. Those who know the current affairs are heroes. We need to live and live happily, and we need money," John explained. "It seems that we two need different things," Lu Feng said solemnly. Then what do you need? John was a little curious. Is there anyone in this world who doesn't need money? I need a future. John didn't know what to say, so he just raised his eyebrows, picked up the chopsticks again, and after eating for a while, he said, if you lose the West, there really is no future. You can go and look at other countries in the world. Your economy is now we just got up a little bit, maybe this is the peak, there is no market for such an economy. It's not up to you whether there is a market or not. Since you have identified it, well, we can buy back your equity and return the $2 billion you previously invested, Lu Feng asked. How about it? John shrugged his shoulders, feeling like he was listening to a joke, and said, well, you still have 10% of the equity. This time the board of directors meeting can set a dividend. After you take a sum of money, that frame will I'll send you a private jet, and we'll pay another $500 million to acquire your equity. Then what? GFN is like a baby now. You want to sell this baby to the United States and then drown it in a basin, right? Lu Feng stared at him and said in a deep voice. But in a family like this, it won't grow up at all. Changing it into money is the most suitable way for you now, John said solemnly. I won't sell it. Lu Feng patted the table slightly with his hand and said, I can never sell it. This cannot be transferred by your willpower. You can wait until the international situation is better, use money to create another company, and wait until the United States allows you to recruit talents there, develop our U0026D centers, and cooperate with Intel. It's not too late for you to start cooperating with companies like Texas Instruments, John advised. You need to understand the powerful relationships in the world. I know that bringing in capital and reducing one's equity will make the company lose control. They say that bringing in capital is attracting a wolf into the house. Unexpectedly, what I brought in was not a wolf. Lu Feng looked at him and sneered, it's a pig. What did you say? John was completely annoyed by Lu Feng and slapped the table with his hand and yelled loudly. I said you don't have the courage. When the whole world is not optimistic about us, if we succeed, the benefits we get will increase many times. Aren't you just gambling on profits? High risks, high returns, Lu Feng said. He said. John looked at him and snorted, and said, I'm not a fool. If you don't agree, then I believe you will agree at next year's board meeting. I'm full. I have something to do in the afternoon. Let's go first. Lu Feng picked up the towel on the table, wiped his mouth, threw it on the table, stood up and left. John was not surprised at all by Lu Feng's reaction, nor did they expect that things would change so quickly. International affairs could change at any time. This is not John's personal intention, but the company's intention. As for who such a huge global financial company listens to, I think it is self-evident. Everything in this world requires a stance. Business is never neutral. Even art cannot be neutral, let alone business. John said to the man in his 40s brought next to him, I think you should serve as the group affairs director this year first. I don't want to irritate him too directly. The main thing is to see the voting results of this year's board of directors. John is very aware of Lu Feng's control over GFN. If he wants to gain a foothold in the company, he must break up this control. Even if Lu Feng has seemingly withdrawn from management, John thinks it is still not enough. He should cash out his equity and then go spend money, go on vacation. In the afternoon, around 3 o'clock, Lu Feng sat at home without saying a word. Judging from the current situation, it would be best to find a sum of funds to bring in the Schroders Group, but with $2 billion of funds, it is impossible to find it in the country, unless it is paid for at the national level. Now even some provinces don't have that much money. After thinking about it, Lu Feng still felt that he needed to stabilize his side, so he picked up the phone and called Feng Xiao. After the call was connected, the person on the other end asked in a business-like tone, I'm Feng Xiao, who are you? It's me, Lu Feng. Brother Feng? Why did you remember to call me? Feng Xiao said with a hint of surprise. I've been busy for the past 6 months. Now that I have some free time this year, I just wanted to ask how you are doing. Are you feeling better? Lu Feng asked. It's getting worse and worse in the second half of the year. Now I'm living in the hospital. Just bear with it. I'm so old. Feng Xiao's voice was full of helplessness, as if he had already accepted the outcome. It will get better. Don't worry too much. There will be a board meeting soon. Who will your company send this year? Lu Feng asked. It's me. I forgot to tell you. I have already booked my boat ticket for tomorrow. I can arrive at the port at 10:30 in the morning. I have been increasingly busy with work in the past 6 months. I just want to have a meal and have a good chat with you. Feng Xiao was slightly excited on the phone. It can be felt that he has grown a lot in the past 6 months, and his words have become more stable. Okay, I will drive to pick you up tomorrow, Lu Feng said happily. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1115. Latest website. Feng Xiao suddenly became happy when he heard that Lu Feng was going to pick him up in person. He had come so many times before, but Lu Feng had never picked him up once. The two chatted for a while, and Lu Feng hung up the phone. In terms of ownership structure design, according to Lu Feng's vision, on the surface it seems that with the entry of big capital, Lu Feng has basically lost control of the company, but there are several hidden points that allow him to basically control the company. One is employee stock ownership means that employees hold up to 30% of the shares. Although the shares cannot be sold and can only be distributed as dividends, they can also elect representatives to speak and vote on the board of directors. The top management leaders have all followed their own entrepreneurial journey. Whether it is people like Wei Yandan, Zhu Lidong, Liukan, or the next level management, they are very sure about the issue of interests. If they lose people, their management will have to be completely replaced. In addition to the voting rights of the management, there are also the 10% voting rights of Sun Hongkai and the 10% voting rights of United Capital held by the bank on behalf of the bank. As long as Lu Feng wins the support of either party, he can make a deal on the board of directors. In a tie, if you recruit one more person, you can control the company. The reason for playing this dangerous trick is purely to attract capital. There is no good thing in this world that can be eaten and taken at the same time. Schroeder Group decided to invest in Jiafeng, and it did so at a valuation of up to tens of billions of dollars. On the one hand, they saw the development speed of Jiafeng and the capabilities of the management. On the other hand, they did see the probability that they could control the company under this system. Capital pursues excess returns. To obtain excess returns, absolute control is essential. When John wrote the report to the senior management, he clearly stated the reason why he would not lose money by investing in Jiafeng. If Jiafeng breaks out and becomes a global player, they have absolute control over the semiconductor industry. They can use Jiafeng's business channels in China to reach cooperation with major European groups. Using this as a breakthrough point, they can quickly occupy the market compared to companies such as the United States and Fuzhou. Second, if Jiafeng does not break out, its value is not low. As long as it continues to stimulate companies such as the United States and Fuzhou in the semiconductor field, if the other party is willing to pay to buy the company, it can leave and even sell it at a high price. Go. In the last case, Jiafeng's development is very unsatisfactory, and it is completely unable to stimulate the two countries in terms of semiconductors, and the other party is not willing to pay a high price to buy it. It can inject some junk patent rights from other semiconductors and integrate some European leftover companies into Jiafeng Group, put pressure on China at the national level, and finally sold it to state-owned enterprises. No matter which dimension you look at, Schroeder's group has nothing to do with losing money. In this strict risk control plan, Lufeng has nothing to do with it. In their eyes, under this equity system, the door is completely open waiting for others to control it. They also know that Lufeng was weak at that time. Under pressure from many parties, he had to need a huge amount of funds to be able to do this in this way. Keep walking on the road. What does it mean to hold 35% of the shares? In John's eyes, it meant absolute control, not to mention that Lufeng quit the management directly. What a well-behaved and current person he was. At the beginning, Mr. Feng saw the subtlety of it, so he followed up without hesitation and held 5% of the shares again. He is definitely a master in mastering balance. Although international developments are somewhat beyond Schroeder's expectations, everything is still within control. Not long after Lufeng finished calling Feng Xiao, he felt that it was still necessary to ask Su Yorong. After calling him, he first talked about the lithography machine. Everything was going smoothly. The working group had already gone and I heard that a contract was being drawn up. Yes, if there is no problem, it can be signed in about 10 days, and the goods will arrive after the Chinese New Year. On the phone, Lufeng asked about this board meeting, whether the holding bank would send someone here or United Capital. Su Yorong thought about it and said that they had paid off the money advanced by the bank this year. Now the bank no longer has any rights except holding stocks on behalf of the company. When he asked the bank to hold it on his behalf, he was afraid that Mr. Feng would take action against United Capital if he found out. Now that he was lying in the hospital, already a withered bone in the grave, Su Yorong naturally no longer worried. What's more, Lufeng now took the initiative to call and inquire. Su Yorong also guessed the situation he was in. Now it was her turn to take action. In the past fights, the two of them could be said to have benefited from each other in the fight. Now the offense and defense have changed. If you miss me, I can go. Su Yorong's voice on the phone was slightly ambiguous. Do you miss me? I definitely want to, Lufeng replied. Oh, dare I say it? It seems that Tigress is not at home. Since you miss me so much, I must go. Firstly, I want to see you. Secondly, I will find a photolithography machine for you this time. It's not a waste of time, but you have to give me some hard-earned money. I'm a person who can get the same size. How about it? Su Yorong offered his own price. No problem, come on, what's the relationship between you and me? After all these years, you and I are indistinguishable from each other. I didn't understand it well before, but now that I think about it, I seem to understand it a little better. It's love. Lufeng was very excited. Seriously? Su Yorong laughed on the other end of the phone, a little sarcastically, and said, I didn't realize that you also have such a side. Okay, I'll book a boat ticket for tomorrow morning, and you can pick me up then. Then you can book the trip at 10:30. Feng Xiao happens to be on that trip tomorrow. The two set a time, and Lufeng hung up the phone. It was clear that Su Yorong had the upper hand in the current situation. She also knew that Lufeng had no objection to taking the opportunity to blackmail. Compared with these small things, he cared more about it. The big picture. In one afternoon, the news that Lufeng accepted the private jet presented by the Schroeder Group has been widely circulated within the group. According to what John said, this is a reward for Lufeng from the board of directors, and it is a hard work award. Suddenly, the internal rumors came again. I hold the equity in my hand and pay a small dividend every year. One plane is worth $50 million. Although it is their company, you can't treat everyone like a monkey and want to save face. When you come here, you will be a member of GFeng. Employees will be given stock rights, and they will be given 3 melons and 2 dates every year, so that everyone can be on par with international first-tier companies, but the income is not the same. Last year, Lu Feng said at the board meeting that the company was in a difficult situation, but he still had to take good care of his brothers. The total dividend was 230 million. The average executive received more than 1 million, the average middle management received 100,000, and the average engineer received more than 100,000. 400,000. This dividend was widely publicized by newspapers, and there was even a jingle: Southeast, Southeast, Northwest, Middle, go to Guangdong to get rich, Guangdong, see Shenzhen, Shenzhen has good peaks. This year has been a year of rapid development for GFN, with the number of new shareholders doubled. If it were still more than 200 million last year, the amount of money received per capita would be cut in half. What's more, many people in the company are saying that the company has passed the most difficult moment, and it should increase its efforts to pay dividends now. Otherwise, what is the point of risking your life this year? In the evening, Wei Yandan arrived at Lu Feng's house. Lu Feng saw her coming, pointed to the sofa and said, "Sit down, what's going on recently?" Wei Yandan sat down and sighed helplessly. The internal public opinion is somewhat uncontrollable. Many middle managers are asking each other who the boss is. Most people don't understand the structure of the board of directors. Many people today say privately that the boss is a European and the company has long been foreign-owned. There are really a lot of things going on here. These recent things are closely related to the Schroeder Group's team. Lu Feng sat down with a teacup and said, "The board meeting is just a few days away." "What do I mean to you? There are no big requirements, just control the situation well. As long as you have the cards in your hand, you can continue to play. The overall requirement for next year is just one: stability. Stabilizing the market, stabilizing profits, and stabilizing the management. The top is fighting to break the sky, and the bottom cannot influence it. Managers sometimes have to be more ruthless. For some people, they should be fired when they should be fired. This year will be difficult, next year will be chaos. You have to be mentally prepared." Wei Yandan sighed helplessly and said, "Was it a mistake to let Schroeder's come in? Without that kind of money, do you think we could develop so fast this year? How could I escape smoothly after all the hard work in Europe? There are pros and cons in everything. Let's not talk about the past right and wrong now. The only way is to face it." Lu Feng looked at her. Said, "Now is the time to look at a person's means, not his position. You are the one with genes." When Wei Yandan heard this, she hurriedly said, "Mr. Lu, I will never forget your training in me. From a small management team to today, it is all because of your full support." Wei Yandan could tell that Lu Feng didn't want her to be a smart person. It would not be a wise choice to side with John at this time. "Don't worry, there won't be any trouble in the board of directors. As for the internal situation, pinch the thorns as needed. The earth will turn around no matter who you are," Lu Feng ordered. Half an hour later, Wei Yandan left. Lu Feng sat there motionless. Next year will definitely be his busiest year. Not only will he be busy on mobile phones and fight back against companies like Motorola, but he will also promote the domestic chip market. Precautions must also be taken within the enterprise. Zhang Xiaoyan had opened the door and walked in. Seeing Lu Feng sitting motionless on the sofa, she asked, "What are you thinking about?" "Ouch." Lu Feng was startled by her and gasped, "Why is there no sound when you come home? Why haven't I moved? I've been standing here for a long time. What are you thinking about?" So absorbed, Zhang Xiaoyan wondered. Lu Feng let out a long sigh and said, "The affairs are complicated, with external blockades and internal battles. I used to think that the bosses of large groups were all about eating, drinking, and having fun. Now it seems that internal battles are also very distracting." Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1116. Latest website. Zhang Xiaoyan also knew a lot about Jia Feng. She sat down and said, if you had developed step by step, how much money would you have to do so many things? Would you be where you are today? Look at how well Huasha has developed. This year the profit was twice that of last year, and after calculation today, the net profit is already 50 million. Seeing her looking like she was about to criticize him, Lu Feng lit a cigarette and asked, are you sure your company belongs to you? Me and Fengxia Zhang Xiao Yan said confidently. As far as I know, some companies seem to have invested a lot of money when expanding production due to poor management, right? Lu Feng joked, how come it belongs to both of you? The company that invested in Huasha seemed to have a lot of money. It had not taken care of anything since giving the money, and it looked like it had disappeared from the world. Only then did Zhang Xiaoyan remember that 80% of Huasha's equity was not owned by her. In hand. You said that you have been working hard all day long, and in the end you have been busy for others. How can there be such a thing? Zhang Xiaoyan suddenly felt like a deflated ball, and said to Lu Feng, isn't this the landlord's old money? That's what capital does. Lu Feng was about to tell him about his investment in her. Unexpectedly, Zhang Xiaoyan muttered, no, if this becomes big, it will be like Jia Feng's current situation. To make more money in the next few years, I have to find a way to start a new business and work for others. It's not a problem. Lu Feng stopped talking when he heard what she said. At least she still had something to worry about now. In the past year, Zhang Xiaoyan has been cooking less and less. Firstly, she is busy with work, and secondly, she has begun to be reluctant to spend money. Lu Feng had tried many times to get her out of the small farmer mentality in the village. Since she took control of the economy, she had already transformed into a petty bourgeoisie. The two chatted about how to make their company belong to themselves. In Zhang Xiaoyan's mind, it was a very typical small farmer mentality. My land is mine, I work, and all the income is mine. For example, I can't afford it this year. I can borrow fertilizer seeds from Zhangsan and Li Si instead of directly sharing my land ownership with Zhangsan and Li Si. She sat there feeling annoyed, and told Lu Feng that she should have borrowed some money instead of selling the equity. If she had known that selling the equity might lead to the company being robbed, she would never have done such a thing. Lu Feng couldn't help but laugh after hearing her theory and told her, what if Huasha fails to develop well and goes bankrupt? If the loan goes out and the company goes bankrupt, it will really be doomed. Everything has pros and cons until Duo comes back and goes to bed after washing up at night. She still looks gloomy, as if her efforts have been robbed. Early the next morning, Lu Feng got up and changed into a suit, which looked quite formal. Duo also woke up early and saw Lu Feng arranging his clothes and taking out his leather shoes. She walked over timidly. What happened again? Lu Feng asked without raising his head. It's nothing, there's just something that the school asked parents to sign. Duo held a paper in his hand behind his back. You are already in 3rd grade. After the new year, you will be a 10-year-old girl. You should know something. Lu Feng put on his shoes and looked up at her and asked, what's the score? You can't tell my mother, and signing for you also shows that I am honest. There is someone who signs for you at the gate of our school, and it costs 1 yuan a time. Duo looked like you can see how honest I am. Who signed for you on behalf of your parents? Lu Feng asked in confusion. It's that security guard. He's nice to me. He smiles every time he sees me. Duo confessed directly. This old bastard. Lu Feng cursed a few times and asked, how many points did you get on the test? First of all, say you are not angry, Duo reassured Lu Feng. Okay, I'm not angry. After Duo heard the assurance, a smile appeared on his face. He took out the paper and said proudly, 1 point. What the hell? Lu Feng snatched the paper, thinking that there was something wrong with his ears. Seeing the big crosses covering the small crosses on the paper, he almost died of anger, took a deep breath and said, 1 point. Damn it, 1 point. There are so many multiple choice questions in the math paper. If you answer 2 questions, you will get more than 1 point. It can be seen from the paper that you are really unlucky. You said you're not angry, and I took the exam on purpose. Hojiming in our class is always the last. Last time, his parents said that as long as he doesn't come last in the exam, he will be rewarded with 100 yuan. He gave me 50 points, and I helped him get behind him. Duo grinned and said, I was afraid that he would get too low in the test, so I controlled the score to 1 point, which is 50 yuan. You earn this money, look. The teacher's comment on the paper is that you have a bad attitude, money. Our family is not short of it, but now we just feel that our family is a little short-minded. Lu Feng looked at the paper, stood up and went upstairs. Walk. What are you doing? Didn't you say you wouldn't tell mom? Why are you like this? If you go upstairs again, I'll be really angry. Zhang Xiaoyan was still asleep when she felt Lu Feng come in. She turned over and muttered, I'll go later today and sleep a little longer. Lu Feng didn't respond, walked to the bedside, and whispered in her ear, your daughter got a score in the exam. 10 minutes later, Duo howled and cursed Lu Feng as a traitor, and then beat him again. Lu Feng packed up, took the car out of the house, and drove straight to the dock. At 10:30 in the morning, as the ship docked, a large number of passengers arrived. The scene seemed quite crowded, and the VIP passage seemed much more comfortable. Feng Xiao walked out first, followed by a person carrying a suitcase. She looks a lot more stable. Last year's Hong Kong-style sweatshirt and jeans disappeared, replaced by a grey casual suit. This way, Lu Feng waved when he saw him. When Feng Xiao saw Lu Feng, his eyes lit up, a smile appeared on his face. He walked quickly towards the side, stepped forward and said, Brother Feng, you look old. Ha 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 ha, I have been running around a lot this year. How can I not age anymore? Lu Feng patted him on the shoulder and said, you are full of energy. Why don't you have a drink at noon? I have been the same for this year. We have a lot to talk about, let's chat for a while. Brother Feng, I seem to have seen Su Yurong on the boat. Feng Xiao asked, rather puzzled, what is she doing here? I invited her here. As soon as Lu Feng finished speaking, he saw Su Yurong walking out like a star wearing high heels, a windbreaker, and sunglasses. The few men in the VIP aisle were all focused at this moment. On top of her, there were 2 people following behind, carrying 2 suitcases, which looked like they had a lot of stuff. Su Yurong stepped forward, a scent of fragrance hit her face, she took off her sunglasses, her big eyes blinked on her handsome face, and she looked at Lu Feng and laughed. It's been a long time, and I'm more manly. Su Yurong glanced at Feng Xiao next to him and said, Mr. Feng, it's been a long time. Is Mr. Feng in good health? Very good. Feng Xiao didn't seem to have a good impression of Su Yurong. Ever since he officially came into contact with the financial industry and got to know Su Yurong a little bit, he felt that this person was a real snake-hearted person. Now Su Yurong has firmly understood United Capital is in control. She forced several major shareholders to sell a lot of equity to him at a low price. It is said that the major shareholders have a lot of information in her hands, not to mention secretly in stock trading, margin financing, guaranteed issuance and other aspects. The number of operations has left many people in the industry stunned. Welcome, Mr. Su. Let's have lunch together. Tomorrow is the board meeting. Let's get together while we still have some free time. We can all be considered old friends, Lu Feng said politely. Feng Xiao glanced at Su Yurong and felt something was wrong, so he asked, Brother Feng, is she also attending the board meeting? What? No. United Capital now holds 10% of the equity of GFN Group, just like Sun Hung Kai. This year we acquired the 10% equity of GFN Group that was mortgaged to the bank. Is there any problem? Su Yurong looked at Feng Xiao with a smile on his face. Feng Xiao didn't say anything. He just felt that this woman was acting very unethically. Seeing that the relationship between the two was not very good, Lu Feng made peace with them and took them out, got in the car, and started chatting about life matters and Jia Feng's development. The mobile phone business is a big business, and I am confident that I can do it well. However, this year, there has been a lot of international pressure on me, and life is indeed difficult. Even if it is only external pressure, there are also many internal problems. Lu Feng drove the car and sighed, Schroeder Group wants to force me to leave. Why? As major shareholders, the better the company develops, the better their profits will be, Feng Xiao said, somewhat puzzled. A lot of times it's not about money. If it was about money, it would be easier to handle. Lu Feng briefly explained the whole story. It was nothing more than foreigners bullying us and wanting to block us. In his words, Lu Feng completely branded Schroeder Group as a villain. They came in with the intention of disrupting the company. Lu Feng was also good-hearted for a while and listened to John's lies. Now it has reached this point and the development of the company has become a problem. Feng Xiao didn't know much about the twists and turns in the board of directors, not to mention that it involved national affairs. He sat in the back row with a gloomy face and looked very unhappy. You also know that I am a person who sometimes seems to be self-centered, but no matter who is around me, I have never tricked anyone in the end. To put it bluntly, I am still kind-hearted. Now this board of directors meeting is put me on the fire to roast. Lu Feng's side. Su Yorong was sitting in the passenger seat and glanced at Feng Xiao from the rear-view mirror. She knew in her heart that this silly boy really believed him. Although she didn't understand the world, she understood Lu Feng. Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1117. Latest website. Along the way, Lu Feng scolded John for his ambition, as if he had introduced Schroeder Group purely for the better development of the company, without any extra thoughts. He wanted to make money for everyone, but they not only wanted money, but also wanted to. He, the founder, was forced to leave and take control of the company himself. Feng Xiao already knew a lot about the financing of large companies, but he still felt that Schroeder's group had gone too far, and his words were filled with indignation. Su Yorong sat in the passenger seat without saying a word. There was no reason for this kind of thing. In the final analysis, it was just using each other. After they used it, they all wanted to take the bulk of the profit. In the end, it was just chicken feathers all over the place. At noon, Lu Feng arranged for the two of them to stay at the five-star hotel where the board meeting was held. In the lounge, the mobile phone in Lu Feng's pocket rang. After picking up the phone, Lu Feng asked, "Who is it? Who else could it be? Of course it's your little sweetheart. We still have an hour after eating, right? Go to my room and give me a massage on the waist," Su Yorong said lazily. "Just a pat on the waist," Lu Feng said slightly suspiciously. "I'm on my period, so don't worry and let's chat for a while." "Okay, I'll be there soon." Lu Feng stood up and walked towards the room. When he entered the door, he saw that she had put on a pair of light pajamas and was lying on the bed with her feet up. He turned back and glanced at Lu Feng and said, "I've been busy these days and my waist is a little tight. I can't stand it. I'm old after all, I'm in my early 30s. Lu Feng stepped forward and looked at her and said, "You are in your 30s, and you have been ups and downs for more than 10 years. How many people can't reach your current position by the age of 60? So one has to believe in fate. You are younger than me and your achievements are no less than mine." Su Yorong lay on the bed and said, "Feng Xiao believes in you very much. Now that he has 10%, you are guaranteed to win." "I will follow you," said, "Mr. Feng may really be in death. If his life is tough, next year, if his life is not tough, he won't even be able to survive the next year." Lu Feng lifted up his pajamas, pressed his hands on his spine, and said, "It's a done deal. This year's board meeting will be very unfavorable to me. I still hope you can support me. Su Yorong ignored his words and continued, I was lucky this year. I took care of the two major shareholders of United Capital. One of them, his son had a murder case on his hands, and I caught him. After the new year, it's been 1996, and the financial world in Xiangjiang can be said to be in chaos. Many people are taking advantage of the opportunity to make money, and I have also made less money. I know that many people are leaving, and many people have immigrated. It's good. Those who have left, and those who have stayed are determined to stay. I can control United Capital now, but I have to give it to you. Just a reminder, something is going to happen to Sun Hongkai. If you want to maintain an undefeated fight with Schroeder's, the trouble is not with me, but with Sun Hongkai. What happened to Sun Hongkai? Lu Feng wondered. It seems that you don't know much about Sun Hongkai. Mr. Feng's shareholding in Sun Hongkai is not large. His ability to control the company is all due to his ability to convince the public. So do you think Feng Xiao can still convince the public? He has too. My brother has developed his own business in other countries, but Mr. Feng has reached the current situation, and neither of them has come back to see him. Su Yorong snorted, asked Lu Feng to be gentle, and continued, these three brothers have three mothers. Feng Xiao's mother came here by squeezing out the second one. It was very unpleasant. When the funeral, it is definitely a feud between wealthy families. This is a family situation and a business situation. Do you know who the major shareholder of Sun Hongkai is? I heard that his surname is Li Ka-shing. Lu Feng didn't know much about this, but the surname of Li in Xiangjiang is almost the same. There are two Lis in Hong Kong, not Li Ka-shing, but another Li Shaoqi. This Li Ka-shing has nothing to do with him. He has a son named Li Ka-shing. Of course, these are just jokes. Sun Hongkai has been controlled by the Feng family for so many years. I heard that he wants to incorporate Sun Hongkai into his own group for management. He didn't have this idea out of nowhere, but Feng Xiao's two brothers secretly promised him the equity. So, you guarding a treasure like Feng Xiao will be of no use at the board meeting next year, right? Yes, Li Shaoqi has a very good relationship with the British side, especially the Schroeder's group. You know so much. Lu Feng pressed his waist and asked suspiciously. Who am I? Since I started managing United Capital, I have had dinners every day. The grievances accumulated in Xiangjiang for countless years are clear. I must have listened to most of them. There are many bloody stories. By the way, I started buying this year a boat, cooperating with a model company, and going out to sea. It's really free and easy. Building relationships is nothing more than money. Sister Su Yorong lay on the bed and hummed comfortably. A few years ago, when I ran away in a hurry, I never dreamed that one day you would be able to hold my waist. You are really a born capitalist. Lu Feng looked at her and said. Ha 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 ha. Su Yorong laughed, thank you for the compliment. It seems that I will have to rely on you in the future, and I hope you will support me more, Lu Feng said with a smile. Don't worry, as long as I'm happy, I can talk about anything. The two chatted for more than half an hour. Lu Feng neither believed nor believed what Su Yorong said. He regarded it as an information channel. If it really develops as she said, it can only be said that the situation was laid by the Schroeder Group. Has been beyond Lu Feng's control. There are many cases of holding companies in circles like this. Many people hold company board meetings and appear to be shareholders, but they don't know that there are big traps and small circles behind the shareholders, and they don't know who is the real decision maker. During lunch, Feng Xiao talked about what happened in the past 6 months in the private room. It could be seen that he was indeed very happy. Lu Feng talked about his experiences in Europe from time to time. After the food was served and several bottles of red wine were served, Lu Feng began to introduce the mobile phone business. In the future, the mobile phone business will become another pillar industry of GFeng. For the Tianjin factory that will be put into operation this year, GFN Group Building, which will be put into use in the second half of next year, also said a few words. At the dinner table, Lu Feng kept talking about how the future was bright. As long as he was allowed to do it, GFN would be able to reach a new level. He also talked about John giving him a private jet. Actually, these are all trivial matters. The biggest problem now is that Schroeder's group wants to exit quickly. John and I had a chat yesterday and it was very unpleasant. They still want to recover part of their profits first. There is a strong call for a big dividend this year. Lu Feng said to the two of them, I have just mentioned the reasons why dividends cannot be distributed from various aspects. The company needs money. This matter will definitely be discussed at this year's board meeting. I hope you can vote against it. Brother Feng, don't worry, GFN has reached a critical moment now, I will definitely not look back, Feng Xiao said very loyally. Su Yurong said from the side, although it is the board of directors, there are not many people there. Mr. Lu has already said that this face must be given. It was already 3 o'clock in the afternoon after dinner and wine. Lu Feng arranged for the two of them to go to the marketing department for a meeting, which was nothing more than a few things between major departments. In the last 10 days of 1995, a banner was hung high at the entrance of a 5-star hotel in Shenzhen. At 8:30 in the morning, high-end cars parked in front of the hotel. Wei Yandan, Zhu Lidong, Liukan, Du Guoying and other senior executives came one after another. I got off the car and walked into the hotel amidst the welcome sounds of 2 rows of hostesses. The entire floor of the hotel was booked, with everything from conference rooms to banquet halls, and a master of ceremonies company was invited to provide full service. At around 10 o'clock in the morning, firecrackers went off outside the hotel. GFN Group's second group director the bureau meeting officially started. Everyone entered the venue amidst the sound of music. As Lu Feng walked in, everyone stood up and applauded. Lu Feng looked particularly energetic in a high-end custom-made suit. He waved to everyone and walked towards the front row. The second person to enter was John. As the founder, Lu Feng was the first to enter. The second person was the major shareholder John. As John entered the scene, there was no sound except the music in the background. In sharp contrast to just now. This awe-inspiring move made John a little embarrassed. He looked at Lu Feng with a somewhat ugly look on his face. Just as John was about to reach the front row, someone from behind suddenly raised his hands and clapped his hands vigorously. In an instant, this person attracted the attention of the audience, and Lu Feng also looked behind him. It was none other than Yang Fukan, Mr. Yang, who opened an account at the R/U0026D company and asked Lu Feng if the company was his. As Yang Fukan applauded, others also responded. Those who could attend the meeting were the company's middle and senior managers. It was originally an atmosphere group. Lu Feng only allowed them to participate in order to show that the company was really a company for employees. I didn't expect to give him eye drops on this matter. Most of the people who applauded John had gloomy expressions and looked at Lu Feng with disdain. These people already understood that Lu Feng did not want dividends and he did not have absolute control over the company. When John walked up to Lu Feng, a smile appeared on the white man's face, and he said in his London accent, "Freedom is the most precious thing. Here, rules are more important than freedom." Lu Feng glanced at him and stopped talking, but his expression was rather gloomy. Then came Feng Xiao, Su Yurong, and then the senior management representatives. It took about 10 minutes to enter, but the applause of these 10 minutes had already reflected many things. A tall, sweet-looking woman walked onto the stage and began to make an opening speech. Today was not only a board meeting, but also a year-end summary report, including the transfer of senior executives and a series of other things. Next, let's ask the group president, Ms. Wei Yandan, to give us a work report. After the host finished speaking, he stepped down. Wei Yandan was dressed in light blue professional clothes and looked very energetic. She walked up to the stage with a folder in her hand, looked down and said, "Dear directors, shareholders, and shareholder representatives, good morning everyone. It is an honor to be here. During this year, under the guidance of the board of directors and the cooperation of various departments, GFN Group went through an extraordinary 1995. Latest website. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1118. Latest website. This year is a critical and successful year for GFN Group. In the home appliance market, we have stabilized our market share at around 30% and completed a total sales volume of 10 million TV sets. Is the first domestic manufacturer to push sales to 10 million units. The VCD market is also continuing to rise. According to research data, the domestic VCD market has great prospects. Last year, the VCD demand market was 5 million units, and this year it has grown to 8 million units. However, we still firmly control the VCD market. This year, a total of 3.97 million VCDs were sold. For pirate manufacturers, no, we have launched a heavy attack on manufacturers that produce products under patent authorization, suing a total of 37 companies this year and winning all of them. As another pillar product of the enterprise, the pager market is also booming. From last year's market demand of 12 million units, this year has shown explosive growth. This year, the national demand market for various pagers has reached 2,500 units. Million, and the sales volume of GXN pagers has reached 5.7 million units, accounting for 20% of the market. It's just that the unit price of the product has plummeted. From the high price of 5 or 6,000 yuan the year before last, to 3 or 4,000 last year, to more than 2,000 this year, or even 1,000 yuan, landline phones, phone booths are widely promoted to pagers. It brought development and ultimately prosperity. At the beginning of this year, we opened up a new sales model. From the original agent to trying the home appliance city model, we developed a total of 5 Jia home appliance cities this year, with a site area of 3,700 square meters. Progress in this area has been slow. And there are many competitors, among which retailers represented by GOM are very strong in the market, and they are losing money in this regard this year. In terms of small household appliances, the market has been further released this year. Represented by products such as electric fans, washing machines, and refrigerators, the market has increased by more than 50%. However, our sales have declined. After careful analysis, we believe that there is a lack of brand power behind these products. Washing machines include Little Swan washing machine, Haier, Myling and other brands that specialize in washing machines, while refrigerators include companies such as Hisense, Panasonic, Siemens, Konka, and even Skyworth. The refrigerator market is still a place where domestic and foreign investment compete. We lack independent brands are also lacking in marketing. The group has also carried out internal reforms this year to allow the group headquarters to better control its subordinate companies and improve relevant systems in terms of personnel transfer. For more than an hour, Wei Yandan stood on the stage and talked non-stop. If GFN is a company mainly focusing on home appliances and industrial chain, then this year's annual report will be particularly good-looking, and its main products will dominate the market. A very large proportion. Product quality is also well known throughout the country. As a brand, its main products are several steps ahead of its peers in terms of quality, after sales, and technology, especially after sales. GFN is the first in the country to deliver goods to your door, return goods within 7 days, and provide returns within 15 days. A company with day-to-day replacement and 2-year warranty. The time has pointed to 11:40 noon, and Wei Yanden's work report is coming to an end. She looked at the last page in her hand, took a deep breath, and said, GFN Group's annual sales exceeded 10 billion RMB, this year's total sales were RMB 12.756 billion, net profit was RMB 2.438 billion, and total annual expenses were 1.713 billion US dollars. The overall loss status: 1.7 billion or US dollars. Many people present, who were participating in this kind of year-end meeting for the first time, took a deep breath, looked at the people next to them and whispered, "It's so bad, you are earning RMB and spending US dollars. Are you going to go bankrupt? Why are you panicking? We don't have any money to spend. Whose money does it cost? Did you see the white man in front of you? The one who was taken advantage of?" Many people present secretly calculated using the exchange rate. This year GFN Group spent more than 1.3 billion yuan on expenditure alone. How much money does this cost? This amount of money is an astronomical amount for an individual, but how many factories has GFN built this year, how many wages are there, how many advanced assembly lines there are, how many engineers have been recruited around the world, and how many laboratories and R/U0026D centers have been established. All the money will go somewhere. John's face was not very good. He invested 2 billion US dollars last year. The initial budget for the R/U0026D company was 500 million, and later it was increased to 1.5 billion. But how did the other 200 million be consumed? As Wei Yanden came down from the stage, the morning report meeting was over. John stood up and said to Wei Yanden, "Give me a copy of the financial report and I will take a look." Wei Yanden looked at Lu Feng. Lu Feng waved his hand and said to Feng Xiao and others, "Let's eat first and continue in the afternoon." Liukan walked out without saying a word. During this year, many people within the group attacked him. Many people thought that the R/U0026D company burned too much money, especially some meaningless money burning, which they considered a waste. All money. All kinds of harsh words came out at the scene. People walked side by side in small groups, whispering to each other. Yang Fukan was followed by several executives from other departments. One of them asked in a low voice, "Why is the R/U0026D company so hot? What about money? Konka, Skyworth, and Changhong don't spend so much money. Who knows, tens of billions of funds could kill someone if piled up." Yang Fukan snorted coldly, "Foreign engineers are really popular in setting up R/U0026D centers around the world. I heard that one of them was dug up. Toshiba's small team built a R/U0026D center in Tokyo. The salary of the person in charge was as high as 50,000 US dollars a month. This was just the tip of the iceberg. The R/U0026D center in cooperation with Nokia was burning money at a rate comparable to bribery. Lord Yama. Several executives secretly smacked their tongues when they heard this. They didn't expect that the company's top executives would use all their money to do these things. Another person hurriedly asked, "It must not be about developing TVs or something, right? What is that?" Speaking of semiconductors, last year China Optoelectronics established a total of 7 large-scale R/U0026D centers at home and abroad, not counting the small teams poached from some foreign-funded companies. "Can you tell me how the money was spent?" Yang Fukan asked unhappily. 50,000 US dollars. That's 400,000 US dollars a month. When the people next to them heard this number, their eyes turned green. They work so hard that they could get more than 100,000 US dollars a year. Of course, in China, it is to live a luxurious life, but compared with others, it is equivalent to 10 days' salary. "What is a semiconductor?" another asked curiously. "It's so expensive." To put it simply, it is to integrate and reduce the diodes and various circuits in the TV. They are many times thinner than a hair. It must be expensive to develop these things. As for whether the money is really spent or replaced, who knows if the method will be exported? After all, I haven't seen foreign R/U0026D centers and personnel with my own eyes, so I can't talk to them and ask how they work so hard for a salary of hundreds of thousands a month, Yang Fukin said angrily. With a cry, he strode forward with rapid strides. The remaining few people look at each other and look at each other. They feel that they are already at the top of the company. After all, they are just below people like Wei Yandan and Zhu Lidong. Now it seems that they are far away from spying on how the top people make money. There is still a long way to go. Yang Fukin's statement spread quickly during lunchtime. Everyone was shocked by the huge loss. Coupled with this statement, they had to think about other aspects. In the private room, Lu Feng looked at everyone and said some words. As the food was served, Lu Feng picked up half a glass of red wine and said, "Everyone has really worked hard this year. Although the company is still losing money, we have made huge achievements. We have made great progress, especially in research and development. Last year we were still very poor in integrated circuits. This year we not only established a production line in the Tianjin factory, but we also have many patents in terms of technology. This is a huge step. I believe that in the near future, we will be able to produce all chips and store them ourselves. For this glass of wine, I would like to pay my respects to Mr. Lu for your hard work." Lu Feng stood up and clinked glasses with Liukin, and then they drank it all in one gulp, and then drank with others. The atmosphere at the dinner table became lively, and everyone except John looked very happy. The R/U0026D company's expenditure this year is indeed too high. We cannot afford such expenditure. However, the previous hard expenditure has been invested. As long as the situation is maintained, next year's budget will not be too high. Next year our budget will not be too high. The mobile phone is about to be launched, and if we can produce it in full later, the cost will be greatly reduced and the profit will be very considerable, Lu Feng said to the crowd. Mr. Lu's proposal is very good. The prospects of mobile phones are very good from a global perspective, but you said that Jiafeng's mobile phone will be on the market next year. John looked at Lu Feng and asked, "How can you guarantee this project? If it cannot be implemented, the previous investment will be in vain. It can be produced next year. How to produce it? Where do you get the Core 2G motherboard?" John asked, staring at Lu Feng. When the people in Liukin heard this, they froze on the spot, feeling that something was not right. Lu Feng looked at him and laughed, put down the wine glass in his hand and said, "This matter has not been resolved yet, but I can guarantee that it will pass. It will be solved within a year." "After the new year? Where do you come from?" John looked at Lu Feng with interest and said, "As the major shareholder of the company, I should have the right to know about any actions of the company. Can you tell me that the R/U0026D company originally scheduled for $500 million, excluding corporate promotion, daily expenses, building construction, and other projects, which cost $100 million, where did the remaining $120 million go?" Latest website. Return to 1990. Author, Guanwei 11 Feng. Chapter 1119. Latest website. This 120 million yuan was transferred to other accounts to pay for the cost of the lithography machine industry chain. Only Wei Yandan, Su Yorong, and Lu Feng knew about it. Everyone at the scene looked at Lu Feng. Seeing that Lu Feng didn't speak, they looked at Wei Yandan. Wei Yandan's heart skipped a beat and felt that she couldn't tell anyone about it. After thinking about it, she said, "There is no problem with the accounts. Regarding this matter, more than 100 million, I believe it must have been used where it should be used. I will check again and I believe there will be an answer." On behalf of the board of directors, I have to criticize. Lu Feng took over the conversation, looked at Wei Yandan and said, Finance should not just calculate the general ledger, but also list the whereabouts of some funds. In the future, we must strengthen management of this kind of thing. More than hundreds of millions of funds is a large amount, and if it is wrong, it will definitely not be wrong. If it is less than hundreds of thousands or millions, it may be a personal issue. With such a large amount, it is unlikely to be a personal matter. Yes, after the board meeting, let the finance department review the details again, Wei Yandan said hurriedly. This matter has come to an end, but everyone knows in their hearts that it is not easy to disclose the 120 million to everyone. The atmosphere at the dinner table was a little subtle. Lu Feng picked up the wine glass and said, "Victory is ahead. We have gone through this extraordinary year and believe that the light is ahead. Let's drink a toast." Everyone had their own thoughts during lunch. After lunch, there was an hour's rest. Feng Xiao wanted to go back to his room to rest. A man in his 40s hurried over and shouted in Chinese, "Mr. Feng, can we talk?" Feng Xiao turned back to look at this man. It was none other than the man who had been with John the whole time. He rarely spoke and spent most of his time staring at Lu Feng. "Can you speak Chinese?" Feng Xiao said, somewhat surprised. "Of course, we have to deal with GFN Group after all. If it's convenient, let's go over there for a cup of coffee." "I think a company as big as GFN Group cannot let Lu Feng have the final say alone. Shareholders and directors should have more big power," the man said. Feng Xiao felt a little unhappy when he heard this and said, "I don't have time. I'll go back and lie down for a while." "Okay, just a few minutes, please," the man invited. The two sat down in the lounge not far away. The man introduced, "My name is Gudley. I believe Mr. Feng should know the role of the board of directors very well. It mainly selects management and makes decisions on major aspects of the company. But GFN Group has suffered huge losses in recent years. This is not to say that Mr. Lu is not good. There is a saying in your country that if you listen to one side, you will be in darkness, and if you listen to both, you will be enlightened. A person's ability is limited, and there must be areas that cannot be taken care of or considered. The establishment of the board of directors should allow more decision makers to come in and come up with a more correct path from all aspects, but you see, there is a disconnect between the current group management and the board of directors. What I mean is very simple. I am not saying that Lu Feng should completely ignore the company, but that we should listen more to other opinions. We believe that GFN's investment in integrated circuits is too large. Although it has achieved certain results, the problem is that the current international environment is not friendly to GFN, and integrated circuit technology is in a state of rapid development. Once R/U0026D cannot be converted into production capacity and profitability is achieved, it will be a huge waste. Gudley analyzed GFN Group's mobile phone business, the possibility of semiconductor business landing, and the size of the domestic market from various angles. They judged that instead of losing money now, it is better to wait for the international environment to be better, to be able to cooperate with foreign capital, and to step on the giants. On your shoulders, it will be easier to succeed. I have to say that Gudley's rhetoric is very tempting. From a business perspective, spending money to do something reckless is not a problem after all. If the other party does a good job, then we can cooperate with him. By then, the market environment will be better, and everything will be better. It's much more efficient than now. Feng Xiao didn't know much about integrated circuits and just briefly talked about his thoughts. Gudley took the opportunity to propose a big dividend. This year's financial report has shown that if GFN did not invest in semiconductors, it would be a healthy company in the field of home appliances. A profitable behemoth. So the money is put in the account. With Lu Feng's control over the management, he might just do something. It is better to distribute dividends first, and when the company needs it again, the board members will invest the money back. Gudley's rhetoric made Feng Xiao not sure what to say. Feng Xiao always treats everyone from a good direction. If Lu Feng is here, he must ask him. If the money is placed here, the other party does not trust him. In his pocket, he still doesn't believe the other party. On the other side, John also invited Su Yurong to the sunroom on the top floor after dinner. John told Su Yurong the same way. After hearing this, Su Yurong smiled and said, "You have to pay taxes on dividends, so why not bother like this? Why not save some tax? Mr. Su, this money is not safe in the company's accounts. It is all our money. This year there will be more than $100 million, and it may be even more next year." John leaned on his chair. He continued, "In the research and development of integrated circuits, let me tell you this, the gap between China's technology and the international first-class level is at least 10 years. This cannot be solved by money. It requires not only money, but also time and talent. Cooperation with the market, policies, etc." Su Yurong didn't understand international affairs or integrated circuits. He took out a lady's cigarette and lit one. He looked at the translator next to John and said, "Tell him, I don't understand technology, I understand money. You can't take advantage of me. You fooled me with the money you deserve. If you really want to be sincere, you should share your share of the excess income with me." John frowned slightly when he heard this and said, "What excess income?" "That is, if you empty out Jiafeng and then sell the empty shell to the United States, you can get a large dividend." "Of course, you can get a large dividend. After I get the money, I will also have to participate in the subsequent internal equity acquisitions and sell it to American companies. At that time, the price of my equity cannot be lower than yours. I have a financial group behind me and I can increase leverage to play with you." Su Yurong blew out a puff of smoke and said, "You can't tell me to get out on the eve of the stock doubling. I wish Jiafeng Group well. The problem now is that Lu Feng has too strong control over the management. This company will become a company like Siemens in a few decades, not in 3 years. Do you understand what I mean?" John's tone was quite unhappy, and he looked anxious. He picked up the coffee in front of him and took a sip. "I work in finance and don't understand these things. You just said that in order to balance the management and strengthen the control of the board of directors, we need to arrange individuals to come in. I support this matter, as long as we pay big dividends." Su Yurong shook his head. Shook his head. Su Yurong thought the same as Mr. Feng. Lu Feng and John were the two most powerful forces in the group. If you want to reap benefits as a small shareholder, you must have a sense of presence and control everything. Arranging individuals to join the management will make Lu Feng uncomfortable and offend a series of senior executives such as Wei Yandan and Zhu Lidong. Su Yurong's strategy is to offend, but not to death. Both sides must be offended and given candy at the same time. Then it depends on the performance of both of you. I will side with whoever can maximize my interests." After an hour of conversation, John felt that although the woman in front of him did not understand technology-related things, she knew money very well. Such a person was quite good. As long as she had enough benefits, she could stand by him. John was also quite polite. "I left my business card for future phone calls." Lu Feng had no intention of resting. Rumors spread among the middle and high-level managers attending the meeting that Lu Feng had taken away more than $100 million from the company. For a while, Lu Feng felt that people were against him. The afternoon meeting was about to begin, and people were entering one after another. Lu Feng was sitting in the side hall next to him, smoking without saying a word. After a while, Liukin opened the door and walked in, closed the door and said, "I asked a few people, said it was Yang Fukin who spread the news, and now everyone is talking privately, and most people are guessing how much the dividend will be this year." Lu Feng took a long puff of cigarette, put the cigarette butt in the ashtray, and said coldly, "Can this person be fired?" At this juncture, Firing him will cause people to talk behind his back. Moreover, he is also an old employee and is now the second person in charge of the DVD project team. There is nothing big wrong, Lyokin said, rather embarrassed. Firing a senior engineer just because he made a few nonsense remarks in private would be a huge blow to others within the group. Will DVD be available this year? Hasn't the research and development progress been completed? Lu Feng asked. It has been completed. It is currently in trial production and is expected to be officially put into production in January, Lyokin replied. Now that it's completed, transfer him to another position. Instead of staying in the R/U0026D company, transfer him to the group headquarters and give him the position of vice president of the sub-department, Lu Feng ordered. Lyokin still wanted to beg for mercy on his behalf. After all, there was no problem with this man's ability, but at the critical moment, it was really uncomfortable for him to act like this, so he could only nod his head and agree. Lyokin wanted to talk to him privately. Chat with him and ask him to stop talking about useless things. After being transferred to the headquarters, he can be transferred back after a while. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, everyone returned to the venue again. The host came to the stage in the same manner. In the morning, Wei Yandan gave an overall report. In the afternoon, only 1 or 2 important department heads needed to come up and talk about it. Following the host's invitation, Zhu Lidong stepped onto the stage and began to talk about the situation of the marketing department this year. As the report ended, there was sparse applause, followed by Du Guoying. Due to time constraints, the reports of the main departments will end here. The reports and status of each department will be made into documents and placed in front of all shareholders and directors. Next, the resolution on the appointment and removal of corporate executives by the board of directors will be followed. Come down for discussion, and if the board of directors believes that there is no need to make personnel changes, then proceed to the next step. Latest website.